Welcome and thank you for standing by. At this time, all participants will be in a listen-only mode until the question-and-answer session. To ask a question at that time, please press star 1. Today's conference is being recorded. If you have any objections, you may disconnect at this time. I would now like to turn the call over to Allison Gallen. You may begin.
Hi, everyone, and thank you for joining us. Our presenter today is Jason Smith. He is a Smarter Commerce Solution Architect at IBM, and he will be discussing supply chain visibility, how to leverage your existing investments to achieve visibility, and the impacts that it will have to your business and customers. Also, for those of you who haven't heard about IBM's Smarter Commerce Initiative, Jason will be briefly reviewing that at the end. So just some quick notes about Jason Smith. He is working in supply chain and operations for 15 years. His current role has him working with many of the industry-leading companies to help create a strategy around their supply chain and technology. He currently lives in North Carolina, but is usually traveling. So thank you, Jason, for taking the time to share your knowledge with us today. And at this moment, I will hand it over to you.
Very good. Thank you so much, Allison. So what we want to do is spend a little bit of time today talking about visibility and how do you achieve it, and how do you achieve it using your current investments and some of the technologies that you already utilize today. So what I mean by that is, it's a journey, just like anything else, right? It's not a sprint. It takes time. And to get there, we have to do it in steps. So I break this down into about 4 or 5 steps, and the first is that electronic data, right? We start with getting that trading partner activity and moving documents across the network. The next thing we do is leverage those documents within the current life cycle, right? That commerce life cycle. How are we leveraging those documents so that we can actually see what's happening? The next step is we apply analytics. And when we use those analytics to understand our supplier performance, right, our vendor compliance issues, and then our trend analysis. How are people doing over time? And we can use that information, right, we can plug that back into the commerce life cycle to help us understand our strategic supplier management, and then our commerce lifecycle management, again, helping us make better decisions along the way, leveraging the data that we have. And then finally, within the journey, we can say, well, we've accomplished what we wanted, but now we can look upstream and downstream to see where else that we can go and leverage other solutions that then still utilize some of this data, this foundational data. One of the companies that I work very closely with that's actually taking this journey, and we put together a white paper with them, is Lenovo. And Lenovo is actually an IBM customer who's leveraging our B2B managed services, right, that data infrastructure and that trading partner communication management. What they're looking at right now is the visibility tool, right, to understand how can we leverage, again, that data that's moving across the network. And they're looking from there into order orchestration, another component within Smarter Commerce that we'll talk to a little bit later, transportation management, and then beyond. So with that, I'd like to just go ahead and get started. We'll progress to the next slide. So we're going to lay the foundation. So the first thing we want to talk about is some of the challenges that some of our customers are seeing, right? We've done many studies here at IBM, and while supply chain visibility, right, and visibility in general, always seems to be a very hot topic, right? Most companies say we need to improve visibility, but it's shocking that very few companies that we deal with and work with actually have been able to achieve this. And what's also interesting about some of these studies is when you ask them, well, what's the primary driver? And inevitably they all say they want to improve performance. Well, the improved performance of what? And then they'll come back and say, well, of our commerce lifecycle. That really indicates and drives home the point that the visibility is part, but not the complete story, right? That foundational, those data interchanges and those exchanges are, again, a piece of the puzzle, but not the overall story. And one of the key points that I like to make, and it's around stockouts. And one of the staggering examples that we have or data points is there's $93 billion lost in sales due to stockouts. And if you really start probing into that, a lot of that is due to poor visibility, long lead times, and the inability to understand disruptions in the overall commerce life cycle. So again, the first step is figuring out how do I take that data, achieve that visibility, and then move on. So one of the components, and I break it down within the commerce life cycle, depending on where you sit, right? If I'm a manufacturer, I sit in the middle. I have relationships with my suppliers, of course, my carriers and other trading partners. And then if I'm, again, a manufacturer, I also have relationships with customers. So I have inbound, right, purchase to pay, and then outbound, order to cash life cycles that I'm monitoring. So if you break each one of those down, you're going to see that there are three major components, right? There's that order management piece and the associated interactions there. You're going to have your transportation management and your interactions with those carriers, and then finally your financial portion of the commerce life cycle. Again, leveraging that interaction with the supplier, if it's purchase to pay, or that customer on the order to cash. And those three components make up that entire life cycle. This particular chart shows just one piece of that, and that's that transportation management. Now, transportation management requires that near real-time visibility so that you know what's happening in flight as it's moving, as the products are moving through the transportation portion of the commerce life cycle. And it's being able to integrate that, within the supply chain and understand where things are, and then that's a critical component to achieving that end-to-end visibility and understanding where there might be discrepancies, where there might be disruptions, and what do we do to mitigate those things, again, to reduce the potential for that stock out. It also really requires a collaborative relationship with those suppliers, those trading partners, those carriers, because not all carriers are electronically enabled. And we're going to discuss that here in a moment as well. So on this particular chart, we're highlighting the pressure, right? What's happening with supplier collaboration and compliance. Well, we're also going to highlight the fact that there are many challenges. Again, when we start talking about kind of the interaction within the trading partner network, there's electronic communication. What we find is a lot of it within the collaboration, right, it's manually intensive. And we know that because not all trading partners can trade electronically. And we also know that a lot of trading partners, that while they can trade electronically, are not trading all of the documents that we'd like them to. We may or may not be getting invoices from all of our suppliers, right? And that causes disruptions and manual interventions as part of that overall life cycle. We're also looking at the fact that your trading partner community, your suppliers and your carriers, in a lot of cases, are growing. It's becoming more global. We've got a lot of different transactions and other factors that are complicating things. And and that causes kind of that lack of visibility. We're looking at how do we align things, how do we make sure we have the right number of DCs, the right number of trading partners, etc. And all of that causes pressure. And that's why 43%, you'll see it on this chart, of executives feel that they need to improve that integration network. So when you look at partner connectivity, right, you want to look at that overall ecosystem of trading partners. This is a pretty simplified view, but it really highlights a couple of things. At the very bottom, we have our trading partner, our EDI-capable partners. And those are the ones that we don't really have to worry too much about, right? We send them electronic documents. They send them back to us. The mapping is usually pretty static, so we don't have to do a lot of changes. So those are working very well. And then we've got some that are non-EDI, right? And those, Pareto is a really smart person, right? That 80-20 rule. Well, 80% of our volume is probably coming from the top 20% of our suppliers, and those are the ones that can trade EDI. But it's that last 20% of our volume, but 80% of our suppliers that don't trade with me with standard EDI, right? They might have, I might be doing fax. They could be a really small supplier, right? It's a seasonal item, and they're using QuickBooks out of a garage, whatever the case may be. What we really want to do is ensure that we can trade with those and we can receive that information electronically. One of the strategies you can employ is creating a supplier portal, as you see in the upper left-hand corner. That supplier portal will allow those non-EDI trading partners to be able to log on to a website, right? So any browser-based computer can go do this, handheld or otherwise, receive a purchase order, and then be able to interact with that purchase order, right? Send back the commitment, send back the ASN, send the invoice when it's time, and then receive the payment. All of those transactions, again, happening through the web, can then be translated or are translated across the network into EDI transactions and documents so that from where you sit, they look like a Tier 1 EDI trading partner. Well, that's going to clean up a lot of it, right, where you're going to have a good majority of those non-EDI trading partners being able to use a portal like that. The next problem you're going to run into is there just may be some, and they may be in foreign countries, right, some remote places where they just refuse or are unable to trade with you or to use the website, and they're still using a fax machine. Well, that's okay, because there's another strategy that you can put in place that will take those faxes as electronic or those non-electronic documents, whether they be structured or unstructured, and being able to translate those so that they can then be converted into an electronic document, right, that EDI document that you're expecting, again, coming across the network. So from where you're sitting, they all look like Tier 1 EDI trading partners. A couple other things you see over here on the right-hand side are managed AS2. So you can either, if you're managing your own AS2 network, that's okay. We can work with you there. Or if you're receiving AS2 information from one of your customers or suppliers, we can certainly help with that. And then there's in-network translation. Now that in-network translation goes back to that example I said about the small company working out of a garage using QuickBooks. We can take an electronic feed from any network and translate that, again, convert it into an EDI document so that from you to you, they all look like Tier 1 EDI trading partners. So, the point is that once you build that complete trading partner network, right, now it's time to start asking some questions. And one of those questions that you can ask your provider is, which ones of my trading partners are on your network that aren't trading documents with me, right? Ask them to do that comparison so that you can then see what's the low-hanging fruit. Where can I start, and how can I increase the number of trading partners? The next question you'll ask your provider is, how can I increase my documents? Again, I mentioned you may not be trading all those documents with all the different suppliers, but you can certainly ask, again, for that report to show what documents are being traded with other companies so that you can then leverage that as well. The next thing, as I mentioned, is that supplier portal, and then finally document conversion, right? Trading or creating EDI documents from those unstructured and structured paper-based documents. So if I had to be asked to describe how most companies are utilizing their electronic trading network, I would say that it's underutilized, right? It's under-leveraged. I mean, you've already spent a great deal of time and effort trying to increase the ability to trade those documents with those trading partners. And what additional benefits are you realizing? Well, what do I mean by that? Well, I mean, EDI is great for automated communication with partners, but it doesn't have to stop there, right? The EDI data itself, those documents itself, as they move through the network, can be leveraged to provide your business users with the proactive event management throughout the entire commerce lifecycle. Again, both purchase to pay inbound or order to cash outbound. And these benefits can be provided to those business users without a heavy burden on the IT department. Right? And it's what I call lightweight integration. Right? So it's real time as documents move through the network, being able to see those and to create what I call the system of truth. Now, that is very different than what you have today, which are your systems of records. The systems of records will always remain in place and will always be there, receiving those documents, consuming those documents, but usually they're at a different timetable, right? You could have 4, and there's a chart here in a moment that will actually discuss that, but you could have 4, 5, or more systems of records that have different batch strategies and other integration strategies to where, as a business user, I could get a different version of the truth depending on which system I'm looking at. So to achieve the real version of the truth, right, to create a system of truth, what you want to do is leverage those real-time documents, again, moving through the trading partner network. So now we want to leverage your data infrastructure, right? Supply chain executives and companies in general are all at different points in building these capabilities, right? And we talked about just starting that trading partner community. We talked about improving the visibility. We talked about applying analytics and then using those analytics within the commerce lifecycle. But regardless of where you are, you have to start with that foundational data, right? That underlying EDI data. And once you have that in place, the next thing is that, well, how can I start using this within my organization, knowing that, again, while the EDI data is very critical to the IT department, it certainly doesn't have to stop there. So some of the things while talking to customers that I've seen that they're asking for are, how do I improve the supplier performance, right? I want that tighter collaboration with those key suppliers. And how I get there is I actually put in a system in place where I can monitor and measure what's going on. And you'll see that here in a second. But the adage, you cannot improve what you can't measure, really takes effect here. You need to be able to understand how everybody is doing and if they're meeting your SLAs, and that way you can get that tighter collaboration. We can also, like we discussed before, request additional documents to be traded with those companies and with those trading partners. And then another thing that a lot of my customers are asking for is a mechanism to enforce supplier compliance and vendor compliance. Now, most of these companies that I talk to will always say, yes, we have a vendor compliance policy, and it's usually in a big binder or multiple binders somewhere, and somebody can point to it and someone can walk you through it. But rarely are they ever actually used or enforced. And the reason for that is most of the time the people who are asked to enforce those policies, they don't receive that information for 30, 60, or 90 days later, right after the fact, and then they don't have the supporting information to actually show what should have been paid because they don't have that research to be able to tie all those different transactions together. Another thing is, again, into that supplier performance management, it's the measure and monitor. It's also providing the suppliers with the same level of information that you're seeing. So if I'm sitting, if I am receiving information from my suppliers and I notice that somebody's going to be late, well, I can send them the same notification that says, you're about to miss a deadline, and or I can, through that supplier portal, show them their order, all those details around that order so they can see exactly what's going to be late. I can also educate my suppliers on those compliance requirements, making sure that they understand what's going on. And then I can reduce the cost by minimizing those manual interventions. So by having an automated system that actually does the chargebacks for me based on the discrepancy between various points within the commerce lifecycle, I can then take out a lot of those manual intervention. And then one of the most important other aspects that my customers are asking for is alerting, right? I want to see the underlying EDI document, those transactions, are there any delays there? Because I want to make sure that if there's an EDI type delay, that is a different resource or user on my side, from my point of view, that has to go resolve that than if it's a business issue. And then if it is a business issue, I want proactive notification. The last thing I want to do is monitor all the orders that are moving through the system. What I want to monitor are just those that are in jeopardy of being late, that have disruptions, and have things that are going to cause me pain a little bit later down the life cycle. Another example of a customer that I have is True Value, right? And True Value uses this system that we're talking to today, and they have actually reduced their lead time by over 50%, and they've increased their fill rates by 10%. And they've done that by just improving their visibility, being proactive, so as soon as an alert happens, they can respond to it as opposed to waiting until it's too late. The last thing you want to do is see that you're going to miss a deadline to a customer, or to have something late from a supplier. Because if I have something that I have a promotion, or I want to make sure my shelves are stocked, I do not want delays from my suppliers. That leads to those stockouts. And we all know that we get very few opportunities to upset a customer before they'll go somewhere else. And if a customer comes in and I don't have what they want, they'll probably go try and find it somewhere else. So that's one of the last things that I want to do. So how do you achieve the end-to-end visibility? Well, we talked about laying down that foundation. We talked about having the supplier portal. We talked about using various technologies to convert and translate our non-EDI documents into EDI documents so that I can see them moving through the network. I want to be able to then have that view, right, kind of a roles-based view. I want, regardless of who that user is, when they log into the website or the visibility tool, they want to be able to see information that's relevant to them, right, in a configurable dashboard. The last thing I want to see is information about somebody else's suppliers that does not have any impact on my role. I only want to see the suppliers that are important to me, and I want to see information in a way that makes sense. At the end of the day, what I really want is a one-stop shop for all things that are related to the orders that I care about. And I want it to be, again, exception-based, and I want to be notified that there is an alert and there's something that I need to take care of. So this chart is showing some kind of what I would call a complete set of EDI documents, right? Those order processes that make up that commerce lifecycle, right? So I have my order creation. I'm getting my acknowledgement back from my supplier, that 855. They're sending me that ship notice, that 856. Now, if we look down at the bottom, we see that shipment status updates. Those are either, if it's a domestic, a 200 series, like a 214, or if it's coming across the ocean, it's a 300 or 314. Now, those are not mandatory, but certainly having that additional information makes my dashboard and makes my ability to manage those orders better, because I have, again, more information and have better granularity and can see what's happening within the commerce lifecycle. Another key point to make is even if my back-end systems cannot consume certain documents, that still provides me value, again, because of that system of truth that sees those moving across the network. I can see that and how it relates to the order without actually having to consume those in a system of record. And then so then what happens is I'm sending the remittance back. If there is a charge back, I'll send that here. And if there's a change order, I can also send that, right? There's that 860, so that purchase order change, and then that 865, that acknowledgement. And then finally, I can receive from certain suppliers, if I have that relationship, I can receive inventory updates. So as I'm making an order request, if I notice that somebody cannot ship a certain amount or what I've requested of a particular item, I can go see who else might have that available. Now, if another way to look at this, if you lay the whole thing out, you're going to see different documents moving through the network and moving across that commerce lifecycle. This particular chart really highlights my concept of lightweight integration, where you can see my systems of record. I have my procurement or my ordering system, my transportation management system, my warehouse management, and then financials. Those are my system of records. The nice thing about the tool is it doesn't touch any of those. Again, lightweight integration, only seeing what's moving across the network and not having to wait for integration work on the back end, because I'm just watching as it's moving through. Now, it does not interrupt a document flowing through and then being able to be consumed by the system of record, but it just sees it as it passes by. Below the documents, you see a couple of groups. Now, everybody calls them different things, and there are different groups functioning within the commerce lifecycle, but we just have like the supply chain management or operations group, right, those buyers. I have my logistics, my transportation folks, and then I have my finance. So all those different people need access to that same real-time information within the dashboard without having to see information that I don't really care about. Again, I want a roles-based system where I can see only what's important to me. Now, this is a typical purchase to pay, right, inbound from the supplier. If you turn the system on its head, it will also go outbound, that order to cash. And then same kind of systems record, right? My order management, my warehouse management, transportation, and then finally my financials again. This time, rather than operations or buyers, I've got customer service, logistics, and finance. The point is, on the inbound, the purchase to pay, you're monitoring vendor compliance, as opposed to on the outbound, I'm measuring and monitoring my ability to meet the SLAs of my customers. So the system is designed with the concepts of crawl, walk, run, right? And so what I mean by that is you can get value with just being able to see the documents that you're currently trading today with the trading partners that you're currently trading with. So even if you say, well, I don't have my entire network up and available electronically, that's okay. You're still going to get value, and that's kind of that crawling phase where I can just see the documents that are flowing through my network while I then take the next step and go work with my network provider and go increase the number of trading partners, increase the number of documents that I'm trading, increase the number of non-EDI suppliers that I can use with the portal, as well as the document conversion for the ones that can't use the portal as well. And that would be what I'd consider walking. And then running, we'll say, well, now let's receive information from different systems. All right, I can receive those information from my transportation management system. I can send information to my ERP system if it's a vendor compliance type of thing where I have an occurrence. I can create an XML document that can be sent to that ERP system so that once that invoice comes in, the finance person can then see the chargeback against the invoice and choose to execute that so that the invoice is automatically deducted at that point, as opposed to waiting typically what could be months before that chargeback is taken. I can also tie in the running phase to my warehouse management system. A couple of things that I might want to do there. On the inbound side, right, I usually will do a three-way match that will include the purchase order. I might include the bill of lading or ASN, and then the invoice. Some of my customers would rather not use that ASN. They want to use either a delivery document, but that comes from the carrier, and that's not always accurate. Or even better, I might want to use a receiving document that is generated by my warehouse management system. And I can do that in a couple of ways. I can do the receipt that says, yes, I received 100 items. And then I can do a put away that says, not only did I receive 100 items, but I had no returns because there were no damages, and I received the right items. So then I use that as part of my three-way match so that I can then pay the invoice. Now, when I say three-way match, That does not intend to suggest that this tool performs a three-way match. That is still and should always be performed by the financial system of record, that ERP. But this becomes the research vehicle for the finance person to be able to understand what should be paid. Right? Today, in a lot of my customers, what usually happens is there's a room full of people trying to do the evaluation or the interrogation of those documents, right? That purchase order that may or may not be electronic, that bill of lading or ASN, usually that's something that's in a file cabinet down on my dock floor, and then my invoice that is many times faxed or mailed. So I've got those three different documents, and I'm trying to reconcile them. Well, if it's only a couple items, it's not so bad. But if I have a purchase order and invoice in that middle document that have hundreds of line items, that can become rather tedious, which is one of the reasons that you want to do it electronically, because then you can interrogate those documents in real time and notice any discrepancies, even if it's just one item on one of the line items that happens to be short by one. You're going to see that, and the system will monitor that all the way through. So what does the business need? I talked about having that configurable dashboard so that the user sees only what that user cares about. In the bottom left-hand corner, and I apologize, it's a little bit hard to see, but in the bottom left-hand corner is an example of the dashboard. Now, if you could see, I can explain what these windows are. The one that I'm hovering over right now, that is my alert list. Those alert lists, again, are configured to me to only show me the alerts, right, those events that I care about, that I am subscribed to, because users only get events that are important to them about the customers or suppliers that I care about. The next window over is my chart that actually shows me graphically all the different alerts that I have. And the reason for that is because, on a web browser, you have limited real estate, and I may have more alerts than can show up in this window without scrolling. My graphical representation will show me on a percentage basis which ones need to be monitored, right? Which ones I have more of. So with one click of the mouse, I could click that and get a summary list of all the orders that are in that state. Then I can then go and drill into the actual details. The next window that I have is a list. Now, based on my role, I can have an order list, I can have a shipment list, and I can have an invoice list, right, that shows me those documents and all the documents that I have that, again, are of that type, that one click of the mouse, I can go in and get the details. If you look above, this is an example detail page of a purchase order. Now, within the purchase order page, you can see that there are milestones that come across here, and the system will show you graphically where an order is in its life cycle. And if there are any discrepancies, those would not be full moons, they would be half. Also, you have all the order details and any notes on either a header level or a line level about that order. So if there are any discrepancies or there are any issues, you will have full documentation and notes that are always with that particular order. Another element on the screen is actually the transaction log that shows that not only did certain events happen, but then has a timestamp and says when did they happen. And in the case of the shipment documents and the invoice, you can drill into those documents and actually see the details of those transactions as well. So in the shipment page, I can see all the different steps within my shipment life cycle. And on my invoice page, I can see, again, exactly what was on the purchase order, whether it was matched, the price matched, and then what should be paid with any kind of chargebacks, any kind of additional charges, taxes, etc. I can see all that information and understand that there is correlation or if there are any disputes that need to be dealt with. Now, we talked about those alerts. The system provides a way for you to create those alerts and be as granular as you want to be. The system comes with pre-configured alerts out of the box, but you can create your own. And you can decide if a super user needs to create those for users, or if you want each user to be able to create their own. Again, that's something that's completely up to you. The point is, you can create them so that you can have one alert that does a system-wide, if something is late, I need to be notified. Or if a particular document misses a milestone, I need to be notified. If there is a price mismatch, if there's a quantity mismatch, if there's an item mismatch, I need to be notified at a system level. You can then drill down into groups of suppliers or individual suppliers. So I may have a supplier that is so large that I have one person that monitors just that supplier. I have the ability to go in and create that alert or event so that, again, that user configured dashboard, I'll log in and only see the alert that corresponds to me. Same thing with vendor compliance. Using my alert wizard, my event wizard, I can make any one of these events a chargeable event. I can do that on a percentage basis or a flat fee basis, based on that event. So, for instance, I could have a $100 charge for every day that an ASN is late. If I have something that is 2 days late, that is $200. And what will happen is the system will send a notification to the buyer. It will send an alert to the dashboard and then a notification via email to that supplier letting them know that they were late. If they are using the supplier portal, they can log in and see the detailed information and exactly why they were late. And they would also have seen a reminder that they're about to be late before they were, so that they can see that that's coming. The system will then generate, if you choose, that XML document that will be sent to that ERP system so that that chargeback can be automatically levied against the invoice as soon as it arrives. And then finally, the system provides out-of-the-box reporting. And some of those KPIs, those key performance indicators, are things like ASN timeliness, shipment accuracy, purchasing cycle times, etc. Now, those are out of the box that can be configured so that I can do comparisons between groups of suppliers, all the suppliers, or individual suppliers. Some of my customers actually use those alerts, or those reports rather, while they do their negotiation with their particular suppliers, who always come armed with their version of the truth, right, based on their performance. I have some customers that actually use this tool to show their suppliers how they believe that they performed. And because we haven't thought of everything, right, when it comes to reports, we've also bundled Cognos in the cloud so that you can slice and dice the data any way that you'd like. Now, I did mention cloud. This is an on-demand solution that does sit on top of the mailbox, watching all the documents move through. The reason we went with cloud is, well, one, there's very low cost of ownership, very little upfront fees, very fast time to market since we're monitoring the documents that are flowing through the network already. And then there's no hardware or software to buy or maintain. Again, I mentioned low burden on the IT department. Now, we will go in and work with IT and business users to create and configure the system. We'll do a train-the-trainer approach and allow everybody to see how it works and make sure that they are able to configure it moving forward. And there's always help available. And finally, as I mentioned, we do offer business intelligence, and that is Cognos. And it comes with the ad hoc query reporting as well as report builders. So you can be as complex or simple as you want. I myself built what I call an executive dashboard that looks at total throughput. It looks at perfect orders, on-time performance. It looks at departmental views, right? I've got a red light, yellow light, green light calculation based on number of alerts, number of chargebacks, those kind of things. And those can be tailored, again, per the executive, and they can be run in the background and then delivered to that executive every morning so that when they get in, they can see the pulse of their organization and what's going on. You can also send that, you can save it off or send it to the suppliers. Another report that I created was lead time. So I can see from each individual suppliers or all of my suppliers in an aggregate fashion how they're performing versus lead time, right? So I looked at the difference between the purchase order being delivered, received, right, and then the ASN, or actually before that, the commitment, and then the ASN, and then the invoice, and calculate the lead time between each of those, and then finally the delivery, actually more importantly, the delivery, so that I can, one, not only see how my suppliers are doing based on what I'd like them to be performing at, but also that helps me calculate or just evaluate whether or not my lead times are accurate, and then I can use that information to understand kind of my available to promise and see if there are any things that I'm doing on my side of the organization that are delaying things. One of my customers actually used that lead time report that I created, and they realized that their delivery delays were actually due to their scheduling issues at their warehouse and not the supplier, right? So the transportation provider was trying to deliver, but they weren't able to meet certain window restrictions, which then caused the orders to be delayed, which is no fault of the supplier at all. But they didn't know that until they started running the lead time report and doing that analysis. So in summary, you look at what we've talked about was how do we take our EDI, right, and that there's electronic documents that we're trading across that network, and then leveraging them so that we can achieve that end-to-end visibility of all of my supply chain participants, right? So I can see how my transportation providers are performing. I can see how my suppliers are performing. I can look at those performances and then understand trend analysis, right? I can look at those metrics. And what that does is it helps me reduce expediting costs, where I can understand here's what's coming and when it should be here. I can make sure that I can lower my inventory costs because, again, I don't have that black hole from the time a purchase order comes out and the time that materials or items end up at my dock. I can also use this tool to help me with dock scheduling, knowing, again, when orders should be there, when they should arrive, so that I can staff accordingly so that I don't have spikes or I don't get caught short-handed. And then I can make sure that I'm getting my on-time delivery if I'm shipping to a customer and improve that customer satisfaction. And then in a lot of cases, really help with that manual intervention, getting rid of those manual transactions and processes and being able to automate processes. So everything we just described, right, the trading partner network, the different solutions around that, how do I improve my trading partner connectivity, right? How do I improve my connections with trading partners, my document expansion, my supplier portal, my document conversion, and then finally my visibility, my supply chain visibility. Those are all part of what IBM calls smarter commerce. And this is a scary slide chart, but let me walk you through it. It's really not that bad. And what it depicts are different components and capabilities within the entire smarter commerce portfolio. So what we talked about was our trading partner communication, right, our supplier portal, and our EDI management. We talked about supply chain visibility down here, my proactive alerting, and my vendor compliance, and a little bit of business intelligence. What this particular architectural document is showing is you can start, and we talked about this earlier, you can start at any location, right, any point within the architecture, and then grow from there. One of the things that I have a lot of customers ask, right, if they're looking at, say, order management and or my warehouse management and supply chain visibility, they'll say, well, what's the difference? Why would I need them both? And one of the simplest ways to look at or think about it is order management, and actually all these things in the middle, right, and even my transportation management, those are your system of record. Remember we talked about the system of record versus the system of truth. Those are transactional tools that actually help you move from one state to the next in a configure business process. Supply chain visibility is what I call a read-only dashboard that will show you activity across each and every one of these different pieces. right? So it starts at when that order is created. It starts at when it's moved through its order life cycle. It understands what's happening in the transportation, and then it understands when something is received in the warehouse. And it shows you all of those in a single location, again, so I don't have to ask a buyer to go into my system of record. I can provide my buyer that system of truth and that read-only version so they can see what needs to be taken care of, and they can go work with their suppliers to ensure that orders are received. And the nice thing about Smarter Commerce, the way IBM has put it together, is it's what I call tightly integrated but loosely coupled. And what that means is you can start at any one location. You can leverage technologies and platforms and capabilities that you currently have today, and you can move into the future and decide where you want to grow your capabilities using the integration that IBM is delivering pre-built until you reach the point where you have everything that you want, right? Because you may have a marketing management system that you're very happy with. Well, that's okay. Keep using that. I would suggest that you do that and use the integration so that that ties into your overall commerce lifecycle management product. Another way to look at Smarter Commerce is through the integrated portfolio, because IBM is more than just software capabilities, right? We also can help with innovation and business value strategy. We can help with organization and operational models. We can help with business process reengineering, requirements gathering, etc. within that portion of our capabilities within IBM. We obviously have the Smarter Commerce Solution Suite and portfolio. We break it into in 4 buckets that we call buy, market, sell, and service. Everything that we talked about today is within the buy bucket, right? And that is my supplier management, that's my supply chain visibility, that's logistics management and understanding, and then document capture, right? Being able to translate those non-EDI documents into an EDI format and being able to utilize that. Market is all about how do I interact, understand customers, understand trends in the market, in the industry, understand how to provide personalized messaging to customers and users, and then being able to use that information to make more intelligent recommendations to customers, and then make sure that I personalize any visits to my website. And then sell, once I receive that order, regardless of the channel, right? It could come from a call center, it could come from the website, it could come from a mobile device or a kiosk, and then being able to orchestrate that across, its entire life cycle. One of those scenarios could be buy online, pick up at the store. One of the things that I talk about is the ability to support a customer if they're in their home and they start an order online, get in their car, hands-free of course, call the call center and complete that order, only to get where they're going and realize they want to make a change, get their mobile device out and make a change to that order. All those interactions and through all those different channels can take place because all the order information is contained within one single repository, and that's within the sell bucket. And then service understands that the sale or the customer relationship doesn't end with the sale. If there are returns, if there are warranty items, any kind of defects, cases like that, you have the opportunity to rectify that situation and make sure that you keep that customer happy. But then tying all of that together is the analytics. So if I have a return, I don't want to just end it at, okay, I've satisfied the customer with this particular return. I want to make sure that that is still a customer. He or she is still happy with us. So I might do that through a promotion. I might do that through a callback or a survey. I might do that through a coupon to make sure that I've still kept them happy and they're still one of my customers. And it's that advanced analytics that actually makes Smarter Commerce smarter. And it's not only just doing the reports and the analysis, but it's plugging that information into the commerce life cycle and then getting smarter over time. And then finally, the ability to deploy with different models. It could be on-premise licensed software and hardware. It can be all the way to a multi-tenant SaaS environment, right, in the cloud, and then any points in between, including a hosted or a single-tenant SaaS model based on the needs and requirements of our customers. So with that, I want to, first of all, say thank you very much. I hope this was valuable and interesting, and would like to open it up for questions.
Thank you. To ask a question at this time, please press star 1. You will be prompted to record your name. It is required to introduce your question. You may withdraw your question by pressing star 2. Once again, to ask a question, press star 1. One moment, please. And there are no questions at this time.
Okay, actually, this is Allison, and I do have a question coming from the chat. Someone is asking, with all these solutions, where should they start? Do they start on the customer's side or the trading partners?
That's a great question. So because the solution actually will handle both directions, it depends on where the greatest pain happens to be. So if I'm a retailer, well, obviously I'm only looking at my suppliers and making sure that I'm getting everything from my suppliers, and I'm trading that information and really monitoring that vendor compliance. Now, retailers also have outbound to consumers that they want to monitor as well. But it depends on where that customer, and by that I mean the IBM customer, where they are in their relative maturity in trading with their suppliers and or their consumers, to where they begin. And the nice thing is you can start in one direction, get your foot in the door, really get a good solid foundation, and then after you get that nice and stable, you can work to the other side. I do have some customers that have tried to tackle both, but I usually recommend that you start with one direction and then move into the other.
Great. Operator, are there any more questions on your end?
There are no questions.
Wonderful. If anyone has any additional questions or would like to speak more with us, my information, Allison Galland at us.ibm.com, is on the slide there. It's also in the invite and the sign up for online, the website. Thank you all for attending. We hope you found some great knowledge from Jason Smith, and thanks again, Jason, for sharing with us.
Certainly, my pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you. Everyone have a great day.
Thank you for participating in today's conference. You may disconnect at this time.